Ukraine's president says he will step down as leader in exchange for his country joining NATO. It comes after a fiery exchange with President Trump on Friday, leading to Volodymyr Zelensky leaving Washington early and without an expected minerals deal. He received a much warmer welcome in London yesterday when European leaders met to discuss how they could support Ukraine in achieving an end to the war. Well, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, Michael Bossack, joins me now from Odesa in Ukraine. Michael, good to talk to you. What do you think will be the lasting effect of what happened on Friday night?
What a difference a beautiful ocean makes for Mr. Zelensky. The reception he received in the UK is so warm and fuzzy compared to what happened in Washington. Jane, I have to be honest with you, it does not look good. I mean, what happened in Washington on Friday may have looked like an isolated incident. I think a lot of European leaders hoped that was the case, and Sir Keir Starmer as well. But you know, since that time, the Americans have been moving forward to bring their relationship with Russia even closer. I'll give you an example. They're now moving to disable their cyber offensive operations against Russia, and that's going to impact here in Ukraine because the Americans were providing hunt-forward teams to help Kyiv strengthen its cyber defenses. But the other thing we're expecting that will happen is more of those Russia-US technical meetings. But the fears here are very big that the Starlink, secure Starlink communication system that, of course, Mr. Musk owns, could be disabled as kind of pressure on Ukraine. The other two things, and the brilliant Michael Clark pointed this out, is the Americans have very good intelligence, and they're the ones who provide the Ukrainians with targeting information to strike within Russia and also to defend their skies. And thirdly, and very crucially, of course, are those Patriot missile defense systems that protect cities like Odesa, the nearby port here. God forbid that Mr. Trump, in his unhinged way, disables that, because that would leave Ukraine very, very exposed.
So in the terms of America moving closer to Russia, can we then, as the UK, trust the United States with our intelligence? How are we to know as a country that anything we tell America under our friendly arrangement won't also end up being relayed to Russia?
Well, welcome to the club. I mean, I'm Canadian, and Mr. Trump has threatened everything from annexation to reportedly booting Canada out of the Five Eyes security arrangement. So when you have people like Mr. Trump's national security advisor and others who have said the strangest things about the world and geopolitics, it is difficult to trust. So what does all of this mean? It means that, you know, Europe, you know, the UK, Canada, Australia have to go out more and more alone. The problem, of course, is that there has been such neglect in terms of defense spending and rebuilding stocks that it's not as if a switch can be flipped and all of a sudden Europe can handle its own security, let alone try to defend Ukraine. And, you know, I have to be blunt. I mean, a lot of this, I think, is, you know, a lot of the kind of very careful statements made on Sunday in London also reflected, I think, European leaders are still afraid of Mr. Putin. He does control tactical nuclear weapons, and I think they continue to fall for his bluffs that he will use it. So that I think accounts for a lot of the kind of tiptoeing or drip, drip, drip approach that we've seen since the start of this war.
How grave an error was it, do you think, for Russia to allow its defences to become degraded?
Well, very, very, very bad. I think there's going to be a lot of quick thinking being done on what to do to build them up and replace them. But we're also seeing, Jane, that Mr. Putin does no longer see the solid red lines that used to be enforced by the United States. And that's become clear by the targeting of the Odesa port the other day, of Kharkiv just overnight. And I'm not the first one to voice this in the past few hours, but it is expected that he will push further on the front line, but also push further to damage and target Ukrainian cities. I mean, for heaven's sake, 48 hours ago, a foreign flag Swiss-owned container ship not far from where I am was hit by a Russian missile. The biggest fears, and I don't mean to be a prophet of doom here, but the biggest fears is that Mr. Putin will go for that long-awaited piece of real estate, Mykolaiv and possibly even Odesa, extending the Russian corridor from Kherson all the way this way, and that would effectively leave Ukraine a landlocked country.
And in terms of the rest of Europe, how concerned do you think smaller European countries should be that border Russia about NATO Article 5 guarantees? You know, is the US necessarily going to step in and help them if Russia decides to expand its territory elsewhere?
Unfortunately, no. I don't think the U.S. can be expected or relied upon as well, a reliable partner. There was a lot of concern in the Baltic states, and for some reason, they weren't invited to the summit yesterday. Also, friends and contacts in Poland are very, very worried because, you know, Mr. Putin envisions the recreation of the Soviet empire. So they legitimately fear that Mr. Putin will move on to them after whatever he wants to do here in Ukraine, and that the defenses just aren't there from the European side to help defend. Now, again, as far as the United States is concerned, this also applies to Taiwan. I'm sure that Xi Jinping is making very interesting calculations right now on when to move on Taiwan, because there are fears there as well. And I've been to Taiwan many times that the United States may not come to their aid should China try to reclaim the island. Lots of geopolitical fears at a time right now when it kind of feels like the rules-based international order is in freefall.
How worried are you about what's happening generally?
Extremely. You know, I have to be honest with you. It's the first time I've been here almost continuously for the past 3 years where I actually have a go bag packed, ready to go. When you're here this long, you see through the cracks, you see the nuances. You know, Odesa is known in Ukrainian, the word is nezlamnost, invincibility. It's known as the center of that. It's known as kind of an economic engine of Ukraine. And when you see, as I have, movers and shakers leaving, thinking of selling property, thinking of moving their parents out, that tells you a lot. And one last thing I have to say is I think Mr. Zelensky has to take all of that into account, because the economy here is really becoming on its knees. And the amount pledged by the United Kingdom yesterday, of course, that's very welcome here. But that represents perhaps only 1 month of the budget deficit, the $3.5 billion budget deficit that Ukraine has every month. Kiev, I am told, is so desperate for money right now. It's leaning on municipalities like Lviv in Western Ukraine for more funds so they can fund the war. Of course, you know, we all hope for the best, but we also have to be wise and prepare for the worst.
Do you think President Zelensky might have to step down to get the US back on board? I mean, do you think that would make any difference?
I'm glad you raised that question, because I watched that news conference very carefully. So your Yaldi Hakim was there, and you know, he was being a bit cagey about whether he would run again. I don't know if the translation was bad, but it almost seemed to indicate that he wanted to stay on. And talking to friends and contacts here in Ukraine, there is like a 50-50 split on whether he was wise to have answered back or provoked Mr. Trump. But there's also talk here that, okay, well, maybe let's give the election system a test that hasn't been tested for a long, long time, maybe at the municipality level or parliamentary level. But that at least would perhaps or hopefully calm critics that Ukraine isn't democratic or Mr. Zelensky isn't democratic. But I think some moves in that direction will probably be a positive thing.
Really interesting to talk to you. Michael Bosacue, talking to us from Ukraine, from Odesa. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent.
It takes 60 minutes to cross the Irish Sea. It took the British monarchy a century.
I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace.
The political parties of Northern Ireland have reached agreement.
If there's anyone who might know how to fix Northern Ireland's devolved government, it's the American architect.
Changes in circumstance require changes in approach.
The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland.
I confirm that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister. My election to the post of First Minister demonstrates the change that's happening on this island.
Catholics and Protestants on different sides, now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19 and end up in hospital, religion's nothing.
People here are adept at finding hope amid adversity. That's the spirit of a place that punches way above its weight. We help you understand the world with us. A toxic blue-green algae now poisoning Loch Ness. It's breaking your heart what has happened here.
It is.
This is a vital resource, a national treasure, now fighting for its very life. They are effectively surrounded by Northern Ireland, and that makes this the most unlikely of international frontiers.
If there's a hard border, I think it'll cripple the country.
Winter is coming. Welcome to Winterfell. It's an iconic location in this globally acclaimed drama. Ophelia was the most powerful hurricane this far east in the Atlantic on record. Sky News, the full story first.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380.